We will call tonight's Planning Commission meeting to order, and we will have the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask Mr. Hessler to please lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jay, and we'll have roll call, please.
Vice Chair Newman,
Present.
Commissioner Wingate,
Present.
Commissioner Keldorf,
Here.
and Commissioner Heschler.
I'm here.
And Chair Baldino is absent.
All right, we will have public communications. If there are any individuals that would like to present before the commission this evening, there are none. We will close that. And the consent calendar. Anything? Do we have a consent calendar? I didn't even notice. There isn't. Thank you so much. Nothing from there. Any written communications this evening that we need to be alerted to?
No.
There are none. So far, we're moving right along. New business. Public hearing, consideration and possible action regarding recommending that the City Council approve environmental assessment number 1253 ZTA 1907 to reduce setback requirements and allow certain encroachments for properties in the urban mixed use North and CO corporate offices zone. And if we could have a presentation there.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I will try to make it a little short here. So I won't go into the project applications, but it is zone text amendment for the associated encroachments and setbacks, particularly within the corporate office and and this MU mixed use north zones. So here we have a map that kind of shows the overall city layout. The portions that we're going to be talking about are in that northeastern quadrant of the city, which is primarily developed with corporate office and urban mixed-use north zone properties. You have kind of that corporate campus over in the middle there and some light manufacturing over in the north, but it's primarily corporate office and MUN north. So the amendments that staff is proposing comes out of a result of several meetings with different property owners throughout that area and looking at the proposed or the current setbacks and development patterns that do exist out there currently, and working closely with the applicant and looking at the overall area. We are proposing that the setbacks be reduced. Specifically in the corporate office, the CO zone, currently the front yard setback is 25 feet, going down to 20 feet is what we're proposing, and that would be consistent with what the MUS mixed use south is, and also same thing for the mixed use north, bringing that down from 30 feet down to 20 feet. Also with the side yard setbacks, reducing that from 15 and 25 feet respectively down to 10 feet as well. So again, these reductions are primarily to the front and side yard setbacks. Staff believes that this makes more efficient use of these properties that are out there, minimizes a lot of the nonconformities that are present out in that area, and brings these buildings closer to the street and closer to each other, and thereby not creating these massive areas of just kind of open spaces that currently aren't really well utilized, which kind of now segues into the second part of the zone text amendment, which would be to allow for encroachments into yard areas. So, for example, we have some of these encroachments include solar panel equipments, and that would include like the wiring and the associated mechanical equipment that's for solar panels. We also looked at or proposing combining some of the various sections to avoid redundancies in our code. For example, you'll see in the proposed ordinance how we have bay windows and greenhouse windows. They're listed separately, but they're allowed in the same manner. So it's just to kind of streamline the code. And the same thing for like guardrails and ramps. Again, they're like in different sections, but they're governed by the same standards. But I think the biggest one is the allowance of the outdoor dining and gathering spaces to to encroach into the setback areas. And again, I think from a staff's perspective, we're looking at that as an opportunity, really, to create spaces that result in gathering areas of people in publicly, visible parts of the town, which in that area is kind of really devoid of really a lot of human scale activity out there. It's not something new. I mean, we have done this in the past. I think more notably is at the former Cozumel site that then turned out to become the Apollo Landing. But the genesis of this is really with Mr. Newman's property here. I have some Google Street views here, and you can see how the building is set back quite a bit, not a whole lot from the property lines, but if you notice, there's just kind of these void spaces that, yeah, it's nice to have some landscaping, but you'd also like to have some decking areas, some gathering space areas, and I think that's a good thing. And like I said earlier, I think it's not something new. We've tried this in the mixed use south along with the Cozumel site, and just to kind of put some perspective on that, this is kind of what was the development there. Is many probably remember the old Cozymel's building there, restaurant. Again, set back far from the street. You had some, we're not going to say that the landscaping's not nice. I mean, it is nice, but but you also have some parking out there. And then once the code changed to allow for encroachments, led to what we have now. Again, some gathering spaces, some livelihood that's closer to the street, and also bringing those buildings closer to the street as well. One of the more notable ones, too, is a building. This one's over on Utah, and this building was a subject of a zone text amendment that the Planning Commission and City Council approved, I think, last year. Same thing, to allow for those encroachments to occur. Again, you just have these front yard areas that are just primarily havens for landscaping. Again, not a bad thing, but there could be more. And so what was or what is currently this, and this building is currently being remodeled, will eventually lead to this type of situation. So again, this is kind of what we are trying to strive for and trying to achieve in these zones. So what you do see here that I just presented in the MU Mixed Use South and in the M1 zone, that's what we're trying to also create for the MUN and the corporate office zones.
So to clarify, the building footprint is at the setback, at the proposed setback, and the encroachment is the public space that
Correct.
comes into that.
Correct. So yeah. So anyhow, so that really is what I wanted to show the commission in terms of what staff's assessment and what staff is thinking, and so ultimately our recommendation is to take public input and ultimately adopt the resolution, thereby recommending that the City Council adopt the amendments to the development standards and encroachments for the MUN and CO zones. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Just to clarify then, this commission's being asked to make a recommendation to City Council to create a zone change, development standards for a zone change, so that it wouldn't have to be on a case-by-case basis as it has been so far, that the actual standards would be different, allowing, for example, the applicant that has once again triggered this discussion, you wouldn't have to come before the Planning Commission to allow this. This would be part of what we welcome.
That's
what
correct.
we're encouraging.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Are any questions there for?
Is there a presentation from the applicant, or is that?
No, the applicant is here in case you have any questions, but we do have, I think, another representative from another property as well.
Yeah. So is go ahead. Were you
No,
about
no,
to say
no. I just, any other questions before we open up and ask the applicant to
Please.
address us? I think that's probably, any other questions for the city at the moment? And the applicant is here, my assumption is, and perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself and share with us your proposed project.
My name is Ben Neiman. I own the building on 550 North Nash. We already have a tenant. We are trying to improve the building by changing the doors and the window to encroach the setbacks. And those doors and windows usually you've been seen in city of El Segundo and Douglas and other area. And we would like to have a patio area for gathering of the office members, and like a little patio that doors will open up so they can get together.
Very good, yeah,
That's it.
that sounds wonderful. It sounds
Yes.
like so you've already got a tenant, that's great.
Yes.
That's very good, but
Yes.
you'd like to have that added environment so that you've got
Yes.
some,
Yes.
an opportunity for them to utilize that space.
Yes, and most of the buildings, as you know, in El Segundo, they have that area for gathering.
Right,
And the doors and the windows, they will encroach maybe less than a feet or 2 feet. I
right.
don't know, you've seen them, is about the black doors and windows that encroach into the grass area.
So
And-
you're using your existing building?
Yes.
You're just going to do a little remodel,
Yeah, the
look to
change
create,
the look of it outside,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yes, but inside is the same, basically.
yes, very good. Any other questions for Mr. Newman? Okay, very
Any
good.
other question?
No, I think so far we're okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Further discussion here then?
Well, it seems that this is something that tenants want, that people want gathering areas, that people aren't sitting in cubicles or private offices anymore, they're working collaboratively, and so this is a way to provide this and make a more attractive space for people. So
And I-
styles are changing, so
Yeah.
why not?
And I guess
part of
there,
the future.
there have been enough inquiries and enough opportunities that we know that this is a change that needs to happen because it's come before the planning commission before, so this is not new. It needs to be updated. And let's see, so we don't need to do that on a case-by-case basis. I think having setbacks, I ran across this, that the reason that they have setbacks is to protect the neighboring buildings, should there be an earthquake, which we do live in this earthquake area, and that they don't overshadow each other. Isn't that interesting, why they had setbacks to begin with? And then, but what we want to do is allow a little more, the buildings to actually feel closer together. That seems to be what we're sort of modeling or looking for.
Well, it's not even so that the buildings are so closer together, but so that they're more people-friendly.
So I have a couple questions. The setbacks do not change the FAR of the site. Is that correct? The ratio, or is it increasing the FAR?
No, the FAR state remains the same for
Okay.
each of the respective zones.
Okay. So if, I'm all for pedestrian level activity, I mean, I'm a big fan of that. If someone just says, okay, I'm just going to build now 20 feet closer, or 10 feet closer to the right of way, and they don't do these sorts of pop outs of interest, if it's just a tilt-up concrete block building, or a tilt-up building, if there is none of that pedestrian stuff, does that actually increase the problem because now that giant wall is right next to the street?
And is that scenario allowable?
Yeah, in that scenario, yeah, that would be allowed. We don't have design requirements that would require these types of amenities. I think seems like there's enough interest out there among the development community to provide that. Seems like there is that demand to have these types of amenities. But ultimately, I hate to say this, there would not be a requirement that they have to put these. I think from a staff's perspective, it does encourage it, though.
Okay, so there's no design requirements for buffers or landscape or anything? I mean, if someone just wanted to just have a 15-foot patch of gravel and then a block wall, technically they're within code?
There is a requirement for landscaping, and the landscaping is defined such that it has to be plant material. But you can see when you go out to these areas, it's all just lawn, which is probably the worst scenario now.
Right.
But at the time, it was perceived as sort of like a business park atmosphere, I guess, and that was the look that they were trying to get. And even if they keep the lawn and move the buildings closer, it's still better in some ways. When you're in this situation now, you'll rarely find shade when you're walking on the sidewalk. You feel closer to the traffic on the street than you do to the activity in the buildings. Even when there's no windows, it's better to be closer, I think, to that. It makes you feel a little bit safer, but that's a personal opinion. So I think this is a good change regardless. And besides, we're keeping a 20-foot setback on the street side. And between buildings, each of them having a 10-foot setback is 20 feet of separation. That's quite a lot. It's really quite a lot.
Yeah.
So it won't feel boxed in. You won't feel like you're in a canyon or anything, even if the buildings are tall.
Yeah. Well, I think it's about modulation
Yeah.
and massing.
Yeah.
But that's not part of the zone. That's not,
No, we don't have, like Eduardo said, we don't have design review criteria for this area.
and the public space, the dining area is not part of the footprint, or it is, the FAR?
It would not be.
Okay.
And is there a reason, though? I mean, looking ahead, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, that area is going to be developed to a lot of mixed use, a lot of retail, light retail, restaurants. It's going to serve that working population that's out there. Do you think that design review should be an integral part of this
Well, we do
process
have,
as well?
we do have design review that kicks in at 50,000 square feet of new buildings. So when somebody wants to build a large building that would start to have those kind of impacts, we do have that protection, and design review is a part of it. It is probably not a bad idea to consider it, for new structures, but we don't have it now. And it takes some effort, it takes dedication. Somebody has to, appoint a design review board, and, it's a lot of work. We could do it, but we're not ready yet.
How many examples would you say that we've had in the last several years that are similar to this applicant's request?
Several. Going back to even before I was here, I know that the area in Mixed Use South along Park Place had a couple of remodels that did this.
Several is 5.
Do you have a better sense?
Yeah, there was one particular project, a developer, if you may recall, it was at MUS, and it was the buildings next to the ArcLight movie theater. Those were 5 buildings that were vacant for several years, and I recall there was a great architecture. The name I don't remember the name right now, but it's the same architect that worked on Elevon and several of our projects. And it was the oddest thing where, you had great architecture, right? The new way of designing buildings was to have this indoor-outdoor with, it's not so much of moving of the buildings, but it was having trellises, sitting areas, fire pits, bocce ball court, and things like that. And they keep wanting to put it in, and our planners said, no, our code doesn't allow it. And so we literally put their plan up on a wall and said, highlight all the areas that don't comply. And then we visually saw what these projects would look like, and it was so beautiful. And it was so great. And so that was really our first step in say, let's try this. Let's change the code and let's see what it looks like. And it was really our first steps to make a successful project, taking buildings that were vacant for a number of years and turn it over to something so beautiful. And so my thoughts on this was we have gotten a lot of requests for these changes, partly because they've seen success. As the gentleman pointed out, that there are other parts of the city where you can see this. You can have a comparison. That's why we did it that way. We created a pilot program to see what it would turn out to, and it was beautiful. Having said that, we're talking about a CO zone and MUN zone, and if you drive by, let's say Maple Drive, and I know it's not where this gentleman's building is, but there are some buildings out there that's been nicely done, remodeled, but they're not filled yet. And I believe what happened was that area was rezoned in almost 25 years ago, and it was an industrial area, right? And I think that's why you see the large setbacks. right? Because in between industrial buildings, you've got a lot of noise and a lot of things like that. I think those setbacks were created then. And in 25, 27 years ago, they just took those buildings and said, you know what? The whole the manufacturing industry is changing. You know, let's convert it to offices. So we changed it to corporate office, CO zone, without really addressing some of the main issues like setbacks, parking, and things like that. And what we're finding is that those buildings are struggling to turn over, convert back from industrial to creative office. And so we think this is part of the solution. I don't think it's all of the solution, but it's part of the solution in helping some of those buildings turn over and be like some of the buildings we see on other parts of El Segundo that has progressed and has changed over so much more than this particular area.
Sam, on that, oh, sorry, Jay.
Please,
No.
please.
On that point, can you remind me what the biggest distinctions between mixed use north and mixed use south are?
Well,
Is there
Eduardo,
any redundancy?
yeah,
in
Eduardo
having-
Eduardo can pull up the specific setback changes and whatnot, but specifically in the MUS zone where the Continental development is, we made a number of changes to those sections of the code that allows trellises, benches, all the architectural features that the architects like to build into modern day buildings for creative office, right? So it has the indoor-outdoor feel with large bay windows that opens up to outside, collaboration areas and things like that. So that change was made, I would say, 5 years ago, and that particular area has really utilized it. And Apollo Landing was, as in one of the examples you point out, Apollo Landing was one of the beneficiaries of it. We made some additional changes for Apollo Landing, but it was kind of a similar thing.
Do you see those changes applying to this area as well?
Yes. Yes.
And I think we've approved some things, some changes similar to this on Alaska and Utah Street.
Yes, exactly.
So, and those are real positive steps.
Exactly.
I
So
think.
we're making incremental changes, but honestly, I think we've seen this enough, and enough of the architects and developers that have asked. I feel it's time to let it happen in other parts of the city.
And I think too, if people aren't commuting as far, if they're riding their bikes or they're walking, that they're going to want to have something like this. They'll want to stay around a little bit and make it more of a homey feel. So
Yeah.
having an office that has something like that will be attractive.
Exactly. So they're creating these indoor-outdoor little sit-down areas, little trellises, and then it's natural that they want a little cafe where they can grab a sandwich or something. So that's what we're seeing, right?
Yeah.
So it's an evolution. We had difficult buildings. We had industrial buildings. We had large aerospace buildings that didn't necessarily want to look pretty. And when those buildings needed to change over, we're evolving with those needs.
So to keep this on a pedestrian scale, we want people as close to the sidewalk as possible. Those encroachments can come all the way to the right-of-way? That's a question,
I think at 5 feet was as close as they can get.
which
so,
is probably fine.
yeah.
Right, okay. Are these proposed setbacks close enough? I mean, going from 20 to 25 feet to 20 feet isn't a lot. Does that ultimately solve the problem that you're trying to solve?
No, this is just one step in the right direction. We know that it's working in the MU South, and so this aligns all three of those zones to the same standards. So we are pretty confident it will work. There are other problems, especially with the CO zone, that need to be addressed, but we'll take them up one at a time.
Oh, I guess what I'm saying is the proposed 20 feet the right number right now? Should it be 15 feet?
I think 20 is still a good number, because if you made it too small, you won't get the amenities you're looking for.
Well, that's true. That's true. If the encroachments are the amenities, the
Yeah.
amenities are in the encroachment.
Yeah.
Good point.
Good discussion. Any other comments or questions?
I'll make a motion
All right.
that we adopt PC Resolution Number 2864, recommending that the City Council approve Environmental Assessment Number 1253 and Zone Text Amendment Number ZTA 19-07.
I will second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that is a 4-0 vote. Very well. Thank you very much, Mr. Newman, for coming before us. Pleasure. And report from Planning, Building, Safety.
Just want to thank everybody. Thank you so much.
You're very
You're
welcome.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This was just to recommend for approval. The council has to approve it, so.
It's one
Just let
step,
you know.
Mr. Newman,
Yeah.
exactly. It's our recommendation for City Council to take a look at it and to confirm our recommendation, so you got one more layer to go.
They see it is all over the city,
Yeah.
so that
Well, we hope that's what they say. Thank you very much,
Planning
Mr. Newman.
Commission's recommendation is extremely important for council's. Proceed.
All right. Report from Planning.
Yes.
Mr. Lee.
Thank you. I wanted to point out, we had a significant project that was, we had a grand opening yesterday, AC Hotel, and if you haven't had a chance to go out there, it's a beautiful new hotel. It's our new 4-star hotel in El Segundo. I mean, you know, it's gonna be good for El Segundo. It's gonna bring in $1.3 million a year for El Segundo. So it was a great project. And let's see, what else? We're going to have a special meeting on August 1st to hear a public hearing about the Raytheon project and their request to amend their development agreement. And then the last thing is on August 6th, our council meeting for August 6th, the Beach City Media will be going before the council. Just want to let you know that. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you for getting the packet out to us early, so we have time to read it all.
Yeah, I just saw that came through today. Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. Sam, anything else from you? Nope. All right, Planning Commissioner's comments. Michelle?
I was going to say that I saw Sam, I had the opportunity to see Sam present on all the upcoming development, or a number of the upcoming developments at the EDAC City Council joint session, and I thought it was great, really interesting, and he's promised to do it for Planning Commission as well.
Oh, nice.
It will
Very
make you
good.
excited to be part of El Segundo.
That'd be very nice. Thank you.
Carol?
I will announce to the public, to our vast TV viewing audience, that the El Segundo Auxiliary of Children's Hospital is holding their annual wine festival on September 14th. Lots of wonderful wine, wonderful food, and great silent auction items will be in store at the International Nursery on PCH. And I have tickets for sale. I'll deliver.
Very good. Thank you. It's always a great event for a great cause.
Yes.
Jay?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. I'm good as well. Thank you very much for this evening. Our next meeting will be next Thursday, August 1st. We'll see you then. Meeting adjourned.